Classic reviews, baby. We are here to talk about one of the legends of soul, R&B, pop music. Why not? Why not? Stevie Wonder with Innervisions. Funk music, groovy funk music as well. In my younger years, I was foolish and silly and didn't really take much interest in Stevie's music up until really my 20s. I mean, I always knew he was good. I always knew and recognized the fantastic hit singles like Superstitions, of course. That is a really famous song. You can't escape that one, really. And of course, some of his other ones as well. My Sherry and More was always a pretty popular track, one you hear at, weddings and that kind of stuff. I always was aware of his music. I always knew he was good, but I never really delved into it up until a few years back, to be honest, which is crazy. I mean, I've had this channel 5 years, so I was a rookie even when I started this channel. How would you let a rookie do it? Why did you let me do it? But of course, upon listening to more of his music, man, there's so much fantastic albums and songs within his catalogue. He has, I would say, probably like 4 or 5 albums that I would call great or really fantastic. Like that's a high amount, because your average artist can drop so many albums over the course of however many years, and there's going to be like 3 or 4 maybe weak ones that you don't really care about, you don't really go back to. But Stevie doesn't really have that. He's got all of them at least really good. He is one of the best out there, and it made choosing a classic review difficult, because I was like, well, I could go with any of them. I could go with any of his albums. I could go with any of his albums. Why not? But I thought, you know what, Innervisions, it seems like the one to go with, and it's famous enough for people to know it's fantastic, but it's also fantastic in its own right as well. We all know this one's good. And as well as that, for such a short track list, this album actually packs in so much, possibly the most of any of his albums. I mean, for the length of it, like you've got to commend him for how much he packed in a short amount of time. Of course, Songs in the Key of Life packs in a lot, but it's like a huge double album. It's gonna pack in a lot. But for the few tiny amount of songs you have here, he packs in everything. Of course, starting with Too High, bringing the funk in immediately. I love how he just gets straight into it. He's so subtle with it as well. Like, his vocals aren't necessarily doing the flashiest things, but there's little melodies coming through that are just so catchy as well. Like, he's not singing his heart out. There are a few tracks where he's really singing on this album, but this one he's not, and yet it still creeps up on you. Too high, too high. And then the... It's such a lovable track, and it's not bombastic or absolutely, terrorizing you like a extremely funky, funkadelic tune from, Maggot Brain or something like that, which are really in your face with it. This one's just a bit more like, nah, take it back a bit, but it works. Then you've got Visions, which sounds way different and is completely different in tone and lyrical themes going on here. It's just a way different song, and capitalizes how that makes sense, highlights how interesting he was as a writer too. I mean, he's famous for all his funky jams, maybe some of his stripped back lovely romantic ballads too, but this guy really went deep into social commentary as well, talking here about how he's envisioning this world where black men are truly free at last. But then he's like, have I traveled through all space of time, or is this just a vision in my mind? Like, the idea that it can't just be true. It's either just something he's made up in his head, or he's traveled so far into the future that it is potentially this utopian world where, well, not just black men, but I know he does refer to men, but black people can be free, and we live in a world of harmony where racism isn't there. Like, the idea that it can only be something so far into the future, or just something he's picturing in his head. A terribly sad concept, and it gets even sadder on one of the later verses where he's like, can this possibly exist? Or do we just have to, take our wings and fly away and live somewhere else? Because this idea is so difficult to comprehend. Like the reality of it is too hard to imagine. But the two sides of Stevie in 2 tracks, like crazy. It's just crazy. And it's a beautiful track too. It sounds really pristine, and the vocals are haunting but also really well performed. Like it's something he's given us almost immediately. Like there's just nothing to really critique yet. And it gets better with Living for the City, one of his best songs, I'm gonna say. I'm not sure where it would rank personally. I don't know. I've never really ranked Stevie songs. It would be hard to do that because he has so many brilliant ones. But I would put this probably somewhere in his top 10. This was always a favourite of mine. Back when I wasn't like delving into much of his music, I'd heard this and loved it. And come on, man, this track is just so good. It's so feisty and in your face and up front. Like I was saying, the first track's a bit more subtle, but he elevates it and it really amps it up. And the vocals as well are just so good. Like, doing that little bit really hurts my voice. So I don't know how he maintained that without like really hurting his throat or something like that. Again, getting a bit political this time too. It's not as kind of imaginary as Visions. This one is just kind of like the reality. I mean, they're both the reality, but he's specifically talking about a story here. You know, a young black boy was born in Mississippi, born into poverty. You know, his mom, his dad are trying to do this. He can't really escape it. One day he moves to New York. And what happens in New York? Life gets better? No, it does not get better. It remains the same, and he's still poor. And he actually, sadly, gets very ill because of the air pollution. And all of this to be living for the city. Not living for yourself, not living for your own well-being, not living for your own rich life that you want to have. You're just living for the city. You're just there. You're just another number. You're a statistic, and you're just getting ill, and you haven't really gained anything in life. It's a very sad story, but the way he's singing it, the way he's presenting it, would make you think it's not sad. It sounds more uplifting than it is, but it tricks you. And it goes from that to Golden Lady, which is a romantic song about a beautiful golden lady. Like, this guy's given us everything within 4 songs. You've got social commentary, you've got the funk, you've got the stripped back, slow, tepid music, and then you've got the beautiful, you know, loving song. Like, this album's crazy. I like Stevie writing about relationships and love. There's no one better at doing it, to be honest. I think some of his romantic tracks are some of the best I've ever heard. Like, I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. A track like Knocks You Off Your Feet, that's genuinely one of the greatest love songs I think ever. I think just the way he sells it and the romantic element to it is just beautiful. Like, it's absolutely beautiful, that song. And it's not even on this album, but I just wanted to highlight that song and show you how good he is at making songs like this. Like, you just wouldn't want anyone else, you know, serenading you. You would only want Stevie. You would only want Stevie. Come on, Stevie, serenade me. And again, he changes it up. Once again, higher ground. A funky, wobbly, groovy song that has such a weird bass line to it, but it works so well. I commend him for daring to cover a Red Hot Chili Pepper song. Good on you, man. The chorus on this one's just so recognisable as well. I don't know what it is about this song, but there's just something so instantaneously classic feeling about it. Like, even if you'd never heard it before, you'd think, oh, this sounds like a classic song. And it just is one of those tracks. And then you've got possibly the best song of the whole thing, Don't You Worry About a Thing. This track, man, this gets me. This gets me. The piano melody on this one. Oh my God, the way it carries the song, the way it switches up. The do, 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 do. And the kind of like Spanish leaning elements of the track too. Oh, it's so good. Stevie kills this. The intro is so funny as well. It's the last thing you'd expect on this kind of album, where Stevie's just coming through trying to like flirt with the girl, and he's pretending like he can speak all these languages. Come on, man. He's pretending to be Spanish just to get a girl. It's so funny. And musically, it's fantastic. It's just so uplifting, so danceable as well. There's something so danceable about this song. It's just pure joy. It is pure joy in the form of a song. This is just instantaneously smile-inducing stuff. And then closing it out with a track that really goes for something completely different again. An incredibly sort of smooth track that has a really well crafted piano melody. This guy can just lock you in with a piano melody. It's insane, whether it's speedy, whether it's up tempo, whether it's slow, whether it's mid tempo. There's just never a letdown with Stevie and his piano playing. That's the thing that I love about him as well. If it wasn't for the fact that his lyrics and his vocals and the songs he creates is already so good, he's able to actually just play multiple instruments. Like I love artists that are able to do that. I know it sounds like real music sort of talk, but you can't deny the talent when someone can play multiple instruments and do so many things, and it all sounds as good as it does. This is why Stevie to me is just so fantastic. But yeah, taking it back to maybe a little bit more the political leaning stuff on this track, maybe referencing Richard Nixon as who at the time was the president, you know, kind of referring to him as he's Mr. Know-It-All. He knows all the things, he knows how to change things. Honestly, the cool thing about this track is that it kind of remains relevant, even though you don't necessarily like pair it up with a particular president. Like, you don't have to, is what I'm trying to say. You could pair it up with any president, you could pair it up with any prime minister. The idea of this track has aged spectacularly well, because a lot of what he's saying, and you know, the way politicians can kind of come through and barge in and be like, I'm the voice of reason, I'm going to change things, and yet every time it sounds like they think they know everything and they know what to do, and then they don't necessarily fulfill what they say. Like, this song could apply to anyone. That's what I like about this. It's very general. I love the second bridge as well, leading up into the chorus, where it kind of, the tempo shifts a little bit, and he's like, when you tell him he's living wrong, he'll say the opposite, and then you should always take his advice. I love that part. Again, just applying it to any politician, really. You could even apply it to anyone, to be honest. It doesn't necessarily have to be political, although I think it pretty much is. But yeah, I love the ending of this track where it's like da 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 da, and then it kind of turns into a bit more of like an up-tempo soulful gospel track that I just love. Yeah, just this track goes through so many different phases. It's so good. This track, again, could rival as being the best song on the album, but so could any. I could say it about all of them. There's so much brilliance here, and I wouldn't argue with what your favorite track is with this album. I really wouldn't. I think you could pick any and it would make sense. You know, I don't necessarily think there's a right answer, and it could change on any given day. But even if it didn't change, the album's still elite. It is elite. It is one of the best albums for me of the 70s, one of my favorite albums ever as well. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And thank you for watching the review. This is it. This is a classic review done. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. Tell me your thoughts in the comments, what you think of this album. If you agree with me, disagree, let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Have a good day, and goodbye.